Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on February 24th, the 4-year anniversary of the full-scale invasion. That makes this the news and events for Monday, February 23rd, day 1460 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5, coming to you from an undisclosed Norwegian fjord, as I am kind of a refugee from Kyiv myself these days, as everybody knows. Hey, Bjorn. Hey, Coffin. Hey, Darlene. Hey, Nicola. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Little Red. Hey, John. Hey, Scotty. Good evening. Hey, Feisty. There's Feisty. How you doing, Feisty? How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Pugga Mahone. Hey, Bernard. Hey, Eli. Hey, Truth Hurts. Evening, Chris Parry. How you doing? Hey, Richie Rich. Hey, Stu. Illuminated Core. Hey, Gary. Nice to see you. Cake Boy and Banjo. There's Mick Nally. How you doing, Mick? Hey, Hopat. Jan Halverson is here. Hey, Jan. Nice to see you. I did not see... Hey, Trevor Lightbody. I did not see Seawolf come in yet. Seawolf here yet? Hey, David from Massachusetts. I used to live in Massachusetts. Hey, Den. There's Seawolf. Seawolf and Nutmegger are our sponsors tonight. So everybody thanks Seawolf and Nutmegger, please. You guys know my life would be very difficult without the live sponsors. And so I'm very grateful to Seawolf and Nutmegger for making the work of this channel possible. Hey, Jan. So thank you, Seawolf. And best to our boy Nutmegger on this nightmare anniversary. It is the eve of the 4-year anniversary of the full-scale invasion. And I remember where I was this night. I remember where I was, February 23rd, 2022. I was making, at 8 p.m., I made a pot of coffee. And I made that pot of coffee because the day before, we had gotten word that the Russians had moved blood banks to the Ukrainian border. Now, if you're just doing exercises, because of course what they told the world was that they were just engaged, we are just engaged in exercises. We have no intention of invading Ukraine, right? Those are the very words we heard from Dmitry Peskov and Lavrov and every other Kremlin mouthpiece just days before the full-scale invasion happened. They stood there, looked us in the eye, looked into the cameras, and lied their asses off, even as they continue to lie their asses off every day today. And then we got word that the Russians were moving the mobile blood banks to the Ukrainian border. Now, if you're doing exercises, you don't need blood banks. You don't need to be ready for mass casualties and doing transfusions, do you? That was the moment where everybody who was paying attention to what was happening with the troop buildup on the Ukrainian border we knew that the Russians were about to pour over the border. And they did. I remember that week I was making a pot of coffee every night at 8 p.m. and planning to stay up late to watch the news, waiting for the full-scale invasion to begin. I did not have to wait long the night of the 23rd. Because of the time difference, by the 11 o'clock news, the first reports were coming in that the Russians and their allies in the Donbass, the so-called Luhansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic, armies were marching toward Kyiv, or trying to anyway. We know that 41-kilometer long line of armored vehicles never made it to Kyiv. The Ukrainians took them out on the road to Kyiv. It was one of the most amazing things any of us had ever seen. But on this night, the night of February 23rd, 2022, those first reports started coming in. And I would remind everybody of how the world has changed in the last 4 years. How in those days, those early days of the war, I, like everyone else watching the war on TV, thought, oh, what a shame. There goes a free and independent Ukraine, going the way of Georgia, going the way of Chechnya, going the way of so many others before it. They don't stand a chance, these guys. They do not, remember, they do not stand a chance. There were very few voices in the world who thought that Russia was going to get mired the way that it has in Ukraine. There were very few prophets out there who could see the future. I was not one of them. I was as wrong as anybody. I was sure Ukraine couldn't do it. Ukraine could not stand against the might of the Russian Federation. And every day since then, the Ukrainians have proved me wrong, proved every naysayer wrong. Think about how the world has changed in these last 4 years. I remember that first night listening to those early reports, 250,000 Russians pouring over the border into Ukraine. That's it. Ukraine can't have a chance, right? There's no way. What are they going to do? How are they going to do this? And then over the next few weeks, the stories came in. The defense of Hostomel Airport, the elimination of entire battalions of VDV paratroopers of the Russian Federation, the so-called elite corps. We saw that column of armor on the road to Kyiv that was sure to just pour into the capital and take the capital within the week, get stuck in the mud and never move again as Ukrainian resistance fighters picked those vehicles off one at a time with homemade Molotov cocktails that 83-year-old grandmothers were teaching their grandchildren to make. We saw the resistance in the east form up and slow the progress. We saw the guys in Mariupol, the Azov defenders, and the valiant stand that they made, holding the Russians back for 3 months at extraordinary cost to themselves. And as all of this was unfolding, I went from being sure that there was no hope for the future of Ukraine to cheering the success every day, to following this war much more closely. And now we are at a critical inflection point in this war. Remember the beginning? Remember back in the day 4 years ago when Olaf Scholz said, well, we might send some helmets, right? We might send 5,000 helmets. We might send some blankets and pillows, some boots. To the discussions of sending Western tanks, to the sending of Western tanks, to the discussions of sending long-range missiles, to actually sending those long-range missiles. Hey, Paul, that's a good point to make. Paul just mentioned the film 20 Days in Mariupol. And if you haven't seen it, now if you're in the United States, if I'm not wrong, it was available for free on YouTube. And you could just watch it in the US on YouTube. I don't know that that's the case in other places. But we will see. But I encourage you, if you haven't seen 20 Days in Mariupol, it's tough to watch, don't get me wrong. But it's worth watching. Is it on the PBS app, Lola? Nice. When I think about how things have changed, and when I think about where we're at right now, we are at a critical inflection point in this war. Russia is just about used up. They have just about used up everything that they had. They have thrown it all at Ukraine, and they're failing. They're failing badly. They are failing so badly. Now, what have we been saying since the start of this conflict? What have we labeled the Russian Federation? A terrorist state. Because that's all that they've got is terror. And that's all that they have left. And we're seeing that writ large today. They can't make progress on the battlefield. Hell, they're giving up ground today. Zelensky came out today and said that the Ukrainian armed forces have recaptured 301 square kilometers in the last 2 weeks. That is more progress than the Russians made in all of the month of December and the first 2 weeks of January. All the gains that they made over those 6 weeks, they've given up today. So not only can Russia not move forward on the battlefield, it's starting. They're starting to be pushed back. Further to this, we see the Russian economy in shambles. It may not yet be quite on the verge of collapse, but they're having an awful hard time of it. And the collapse is coming. Even Russian economists are saying that a recession is now unavoidable for the Russian Federation. Now, fucking don't tell me what to do, you fucking cunt. All right. Now, on the subject of Russian terror, the Russian terror campaign continues. We know that the reason that I am on this fjord in Norway is because, I think I've said it publicly before, right? That before I left Kyiv, after 26 days with no heat, I was being treated for pneumonia. I was being treated for pneumonia. And so the situation in Kyiv is bad. It's very bad. People have very limited heating, very limited lighting, very limited power, sometimes limited water. And that's the situation. And as I say, after 26 days with no heat, my health was not good and I had to leave Kyiv. Now, as everybody also knows, by sheer coincidence, I had the trip to my buddy's wedding planned. So I had 3 weeks out of Kyiv on the books. That has been extended by another 3 weeks because of the situation in Kyiv. And I'm very grateful to Arna, who took me in and put me in the family summer house up here in Norway, so that I have heat and light and a place to stay for a couple weeks. The situation in Kyiv, I feel very divorced from not being there. It's very difficult because I'm not there to get the sense of the city every day. The people I talk to every day, I'm not talking to them every day. And when I talk to them, they don't tell me what's really happening. I know they don't. How do I know that they're not telling me what's really happening? Is because they all say the same thing. They say, oh, it's not that bad. The heat is on. We have power so many hours a day. It's not that bad. Don't come back yet. right? There's a disconnect there. People don't want to say how hard they're struggling. People don't want to say how difficult it is for them. But they absolutely do not want me to have to suffer through it if I don't have to. And it's tough. It's a tough situation. But it's a terrorist situation. What the Russians are doing is terrorism. You right, Paul? It's terrorism of the worst sort. And we saw them do more of it this weekend. Much more of it. We saw a large-scale missile and drone attack come in. 297 drones, of which the Ukrainians shot down 274. That's a 92% interception rate. Great shooting. Even the missiles, 50 missiles, 33 of them shot down. 66% interception rate. Great shooting by the air defense units and the other elements of the Ukrainian armed forces and territorial defense forces that defend Ukraine from these attacks in the sky. All of that for one Ukrainian unalived and dozens wounded. Now, of course, we mourn that one Ukrainian. But this is a $100 million attack. And it's not effective. What the Russians are doing is not effective. None of it is. And they can't keep it up either. Yeah, they sent 350 aerial targets in on Saturday. What did they send last night? 126. They can't keep it up. Of that 126, 105 were shot down. The Russians can't keep it up. So what do? They resort to more base terror attacks. In Kherson this weekend, we saw a minibus, just a civilian minibus, targeted by Russian drones, and the driver was killed. In Lviv, we saw a Ukrainian woman arrested after a homemade improvised explosive device went off and injured some police officers after someone had called in a reported burglary attempt. Hey, Van, how you living? Thanks, Spear Point. Right, this is the definition of terrorism. You call in a reported burglary. The police come out to investigate. Then you detonate a homemade explosive and injure those cops. That draws many more police there, and then you detonate a second one, double tap, killing a 23-year-old female police officer who was just married last September, and injuring dozens of others. Initial reports indicated that there were multiple fatalities. There were not. One police officer was unalived in that attack, and that's it. 25 others were injured, 6 of them in critical condition in hospital now. According to Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko, there is every reason to believe this crime was committed on the orders of Russia. This is not the first time the enemy has created deadly traps for Ukrainian law enforcement. And that attack was only one in a series of attacks. Today in Dnipro, a police station, there was reported an explosion and reports of gunfire. In Mykolaiv, an explosion was reported at a closed gas station where officers commonly parked their police cars, and 7 officers were injured, with 2 in serious condition. Exactly, guard. Who else would it be? Even if there were some, and I'm not saying that there isn't, I don't know. Even if there were some opposition terrorist Ukrainian group who do you think would be funding them? Who would be providing them with the explosives? It's the fucking Russians. Of course it's the fucking Russians. Who else could it possibly be? Now, Ukrainian Interior Minister Klemenko, in a press briefing today, said Russia is waging war not only with missiles, but also recruiting people through social media and inciting arson and terrorist attacks. And let's not forget that it's just last week that the Ukrainian National Police Force thwarted a ring of Russian-paid assassins who were preparing a series of high-profile assassinations inside of Ukraine. This is the Russians, as Interior Minister Klemenko said, demonstrating the Kremlin's ongoing commitment to destabilizing Ukraine. Because that's what they have to do. That's all that Russia can do. It's all that the Russias and the Trumps of the world can do, is divide people, pit them against each other, destabilize, because these are not builders. These people are not creating something. They are out to squeeze out of the world every drop of blood they can get for themselves and destroy anything that they have to do it. And that's what we're seeing now. Destabilizing Ukraine is the only way Russia can win. They are frozen on the battlefield or being pushed back, despite the terror campaign against Ukrainian infrastructure. Ukraine has hung together. Every attempt to coerce or cajole Ukraine into capitulation has failed. And it is going to cost the Russians everything. Everything. Thanks, Kirill. In the crucible of this war, a new Ukrainian identity is being tempered, forged, and that steel will forever be antithetical to the Russian slave mindset. That notion of unwavering obedience to the strong man, of surrendering your own humanity in base obsequience. The very kind of tribute we see Donald Trump demanding from the Republican Party today in the U.S. The forever games of ritual humiliation at the feet of your master. Obscenity. No. The Ukrainians will not bend the knee. They will not beg. They will not stoop. They will not grovel at Putin's feet. It will never happen. While Russia devolves to pack animals and ponies, the base terror attacks of a failed state trying to bring its neighbors down with it, all the while exposing its own debased, decadent position. Ukraine is evolving. Ukraine is innovating. Ukraine is moving forward. In the autumn, throughout the autumn, we talked about what would be next in this war. And for those of you that were part of that conversation, you remember that I suggested that we are now witnessing. First, we witnessed the evolution of drone warfare and that huge change in the battle space where the future is controlled by drones. But now in this conflict, We are on the verge of witnessing the evolution of Ukrainian domestic long-range missiles in order to not just damage the infrastructure of the oil and gas industry inside Russia, but to dismantle it. You're not going to be able to do it with drones alone. The biggest Ukrainian drone carries a payload of 350 kilograms. It's not what you need to take out an oil refinery. You need Flamingo missiles with over a ton of TNT equivalent in that nose cone. That's what you need. And that's what the Ukrainians are about to deliver. Now, I suggested back in, when we first learned about the Flamingos, give the Ukrainians a couple months, we'll start to see flamboyances of flamingos flying. But it didn't happen. It didn't materialize. Now we know why. And for followers of this channel, you can repeat this, I'm sure, because we've talked about it. But for everybody else, let's just be clear on why the flamingos were delayed. I speculated a lot about it in December. But it turns out that what happened, Zelensky told us at the Munich Security Council meeting, the Flamingo production facility was hit by a Russian missile and was taken offline in December. They had to find a new production facility, get it up and running in secret, and get it going again. That has finally happened. And so Zelensky can tell us this because the problem's been fixed. The other thing that we've learned recently is that the Ukrainians seem to have found a solution to the lack of anti-avoidance, anti-detection technology in the Flamingos. It appears that the Ukrainians have evolved a terrain mapping system that lets the Flamingo fly very low, avoiding Russian radars, so that it can do things like fly, I think it was 900 kilometers, about 600 miles. Over the weekend, one of these Flamingo missiles, at least one, blew a 30 by 24 meter hole through the roof of what is arguably one of Russia's most important and best defended defense industrial complexes. The target of Ukraine's favorite homegrown pink dildo of justice was the Votkinsk plant, building number 19. That is the stamping and electroplating workshop where missile body components are shaped and coated before final assembly. Which missile bodies and components? Both the ballistic Iskander-M and the Kinzhal hypersonic missile, as well as the vaunted intermediate range ballistic missile, the Oreshnik, as well as their ICBMs, but they're not mostly in production these days. I got a question for you. One question, everybody. If you can't shape the missile bodies, do you have missiles? If you can't do this important step in the production process, what have you got? You sure as fuck don't have any new Iskander-M's to fire at the people of Ukraine. That's for sure. This is the pattern. The degenerate Russian Federation is degenerating and devolving in front of our eyes, while the Ukrainians are innovating and evolving in front of our eyes. Russia has lost capabilities since the start of this war. The Ukrainians have gained capabilities, and the Ukrainians are continuing to gain capabilities. We just learned, right? Zelensky quoted findings by the ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, the Washington-based think tank that I quote so often on here. Ukraine has recaptured 301 square kilometers in the last fortnight, in the last 2 weeks. The ISW confirms multiple settlements liberated east of Novopavlivka and southeast of Oleksandrivka on the Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia border. Now look, this might all be that the Ukrainians are capable of taking advantage of targets of opportunity, which of course they are, right? The Ukrainians are great at seeing an opportunity and taking advantage of it in the moment. And the moment that has been created, the opportunity that has been created, is the Russian loss of Starlink and Telegram, frustrating Russian communication and coordination activities on the battlefield. The question, it remains to be seen whether or not this forward movement that the Ukrainians are currently experiencing can be sustained, or if it is a temporary result of the loss of the technology. Regardless, the front has barely moved in 21 months. And it is unlikely to move one way or the other very much anytime soon. I don't think. But with every advantage that they have squandered, 4 years into this thing, entering the 5th year tomorrow, Russia is mired. And it can't win on the battlefield. They are out of tanks. They are out of armor. They are sending their people in on ponies because that's what they got left. Now, they do have help, though, and this is a concern. You know, so everybody knows Slovakia and Hungary, Orban and Fico, are in the pockets of Putin, right? They're the only Europeans. Well, actually, Fico in the end didn't go, did he? I was going to say they were the only European leaders that went to the May Day parade on May 9th last year. But in fact, if I remember right, Fico actually chickened out at the last moment and didn't go. These guys are in Putin's pocket. How do I know this? Well, yeah, let's hope so, Gizmo, right? Orban's up for re-election in April. And the hope is that the Hungarian people will get rid of him. They will choose Europe, right? Tell me that you know nothing about this war without telling me you know nothing about this war. Poops 105. Poops. You got your name right. I'll tell you that, Poops, because that's all a load of shit right there. Idiots. Shut this person up, would you please, guys? Now, on the subject of Fico and Orban, Hungary and Slovakia, everybody here knows the Druzhba pipeline, right through Ukraine, carried oil to the Hungarians and the Slovakians, as well as lots of Central Europe for decades. When the war began, the Ukrainians told everybody, now look, we're not going to shut the pipeline down. We're under contract with them for 3 more years. We're going to let the contract expire. Then we're going to shut it down. And everybody in Europe had 3 years to find alternate sources of energy. And everyone did except Fico and Orban. Because, of course, Putin kept whispering in their ear, right? Don't get off the oil. You need that cheap oil. You got to have that oil. And don't worry, we win in Ukraine soon. I give you more oil even cheaper. Trust me. Now, the Ukrainians shut down the pipeline right on schedule. However, there's more to it than that, right? It's always more complicated. There are other pipelines, and those other pipelines could still supply oil to Fisho and Orban. And through some negotiated settlements, that's how they've been getting their oil. On January 27th, Ukraine says that a piece of that pipeline was attacked by the Russians. Now, whether it was actually attacked by the Russians or the Russians just hit it by accident, the Russians took the pipeline, their own pipeline, to Hungary and Slovakia offline. Now dig it. And now look, you and me both, Paul, and I don't trust her at all. Now look, whether the Russians did this on purpose or not, and I'm in the camp, because the Russians will do things to hurt themselves on purpose so that they can use it as leverage against others. We know that, right? The sugar bombings that started the Second Chechen War were staged by Putin and his GUR goons. So the Russians are very capable of cutting themselves to bleed on you. And it looks to me like that's what happened with this pipeline incident. The Russians blow up the pipeline, stop the oil to Hungary and Slovakia. And what do Hungary and Slovakia do? They blame Ukraine, and Hungary says, because of that pipeline, I'm going to oppose the $90 billion loan that you are absolutely depending on. Slovakia says, because of that pipeline, I'm going to stop selling you electricity, which you so desperately need right now. So that's the situation. Putin is the puppet pulling the strings. And he's getting Orban and Fisho to dance to his tune. I don't know, Anne, but it doesn't seem likely to me. I'll tell you why. So Anne here is saying, I heard that women started to report their abusive husbands because now the police enroll them. And I assume she means enlist them in the army. Then the reason, Anne, I kind of doubt that is because Putin made domestic violence legal again. I'm not even kidding. This is not a joke. All of the laws that said you can't hit your wife have been removed from the Russian Federation books. And basically what Putin has said is, look, sometimes you have to beat your wife. Just sometimes you have to. So we're just going to decriminalize all that activity. So that's a real thing. I apologize, Nicola. I don't know what alternative Zelensky suggested. I agree, Valley Girl. I think that is what they wanted. So Gizmo, as I understand it, the Druzhba pipeline through Ukraine is shut down and has been for over a year, right? January 1st of 2025 was when that contract expired. However, the infrastructure in Russia of the Druzhba pipeline, the pumping stations, and the pipeline itself have been rerouted to send oil through a different pipeline. And I apologize, it escapes me which one that is. But the word is that it was elements of the Druzhba that connect to the pipeline that's currently supplying Hungary and Slovakia that were hit. Now, funny enough, and I don't know, oh, Nickel, is this what you mean? Because it's my understanding that the Ukrainians then did turn around and hit a pumping station on the Druzhba themselves, right? So rather than repair the line or get it fixed again, they blew up part of it. And maybe that's what you mean by Zelensky's alternative response to Fico and Orban. But I'm not sure. Okay. Well, I wouldn't say that we have international F-16s flying now, but there is apparently an international F-16 squadron. Squadron is the right word. Thank you to everybody who corrected me on that. This squadron includes Dutch and U.S. F-16 pilots, former NATO pilots, former U.S. pilots, former Dutch Air Force pilots. And apparently it involves several two-seater F-16s. Now, the two-seaters are for training, right? Normally, there's only one pilot in an F-16, but the two-seater cockpits are for doing training runs. So you have one experienced pilot, one inexperienced pilot, and the two can work together to bring the knowledge and learning of the senior pilot to the younger pilot. And apparently this is happening every day now. And I think that's good news for Ukraine. Ukraine has cut their reliance on Slovak energy. Good. They shouldn't buy from them. There has to be alternative sources. You know, whether it's the Romanians or the Poles or whoever. Yeah, Maria Zakharova did call them mercenaries. Slovakia wants EU to investigate if Ukraine is telling the truth on the pipeline. It's always funny to me when liars demand investigations into whether other people are telling the truth or not. All right, that's about it for me. Big thanks to Seawolf and Nutmegger, who are our sponsors tonight, to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course to the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Feisty, Pete, and Travis, and Maddie. I didn't see Maddie write in tonight. I hope she's feeling okay. Thanks, Lola. So questions, comments, points of observation, anything from anybody about anything. It is the 4-year anniversary of the eve of the full-scale invasion. It was this time 4 years ago that 250,000 Russians were planning to pour over the border and seize Ukraine in a couple of weeks. Kyiv, the battle plans that were found in Bucha and Irpin and in Zaporizhia and in Kharkiv, when those areas were liberated, indicated that the Russians expected to take Kyiv in 3 days, and then mop-up operations to take the country would take another 3 weeks. And that would be it. And that is not at all what happened. Not at all what happened. It has been the privilege of my life to have spent the last 3 years in Kyiv watching the Ukrainians make history almost every week. How was China? China was great, Michael. Welcome back. Saturday, guys, Saturday is the 1000th day of this channel. So I'm going to do a special live Ask Me Anything Saturday event. Keep your eyes open for that. It'll be in the regular time, 5 p.m. And I'll happily talk about China at length on Saturday if you like, Michael. Opinion on Belarus military exercises? I don't know, Nicola. I don't know anything about it. Have they been doing exercises recently? I apologize. The China trip and then this last week of travel since I'm back from Beijing, I'm really out of the loop. I'm catching up, and I just started to really catch up today. So I may know something tomorrow. I don't know anything about it right now. Thanks, Jimbo. 4 years, Lola. Can you believe it? Thank you, McNally. I sure do appreciate it. Like I said, I'm catching up. I'm getting my shit together. Getting over vacation and getting back to work. And it is a labor of love. There is no two ways about it. Nobody believes in Ukraine the way that I do. Even the Ukrainians don't. I know, 4 years. Just think the kids that were freshmen are going to graduate this year. Thanks, Victoria. Without the sponsors, man, my life is very difficult. I rolled into Arns with $12.50 in my checking account. Thank God he's feeding me. Mike Kelly, the Russians have failed. Is it possible to export oil from Russia to Slovakia and Hungary right now? Sven, I don't know the answer to that. The crisscrossing, redundant nature of the oil pipeline infrastructure of Eastern Europe and Russia would lead me to believe that, yes, there is a way to do it. But I just don't know what that way is. Oh, Dusty makes an excellent point. And I hope that I have underscored it by referring to it as the 4-year anniversary of the full-scale invasion. The war itself, the Donbass War, has been raging for 12 years, since 2014. And it's an excellent point to make, Dusty. Spearpoint heard about a big explosion in Moscow now. Well, you know that Moscow is being targeted. Just last night, I want to say 60 Ukrainian drones hit Moscow, shutting down all 4 major airports. And you know, that is an economic cost. When you close down business like that, travel, it costs the Russians tens of millions of dollars a day when those airports are closed. Den brings up a great point, a great story that was in the press that I have not covered, and that I should make a video about, Den. You're right. So the Ukrainians were invited to Estonia as part of NATO training exercises. And they deployed the NATO troops in a standard NATO deployment methodology, while the Ukrainians countered with drones. If it had been a live fire exercise, all 200 NATO soldiers participating would have been eliminated within the first 6 hours of the exercise. They whooped their asses, whooped them good, and everybody was shocked. Oh, I love licorice, Hopat. I'm going to eat all the licorice I can. Russians entered Norway in October 1944 and left in September 1945. They had plans for occupation. Yeah, Occupying a Nordic country. I don't know what you're thinking. Yeah, Smiley, the sins of the People's Republic of China are real. The supply of dual-use electronic components for weapons, the purchase of oil. China has just about doubled its oil purchases in the last few weeks. Doubled. Because the Indians have pulled out. And so now China is exploiting Russia for deep, deep discounts. We're talking about like $40 a barrel. Deep discount from Brent, but they're still buying it. And that funds Russia's war machine. However, I was very pleased to learn that the Chinese are sending an energy package of humanitarian aid to try to help repair and create a more resilient grid in Ukraine. It's going to be good, Feisty, just to be off the road. I mean, look, travel is invigorating. I'm not saying it's not, but it's also stressful. I mean, I took a train, a plane, and 3 buses. I'm sorry, 2 trains, a plane, and 3 buses in the last week. So every day it's like, ooh, am I going to make it? How do I get there? Do I have enough money for a cab? Do I have to take a bus to get to the bus? What am I going to do? It's a constant stress. You're in these great cities, right? I was in Groningen, Berlin, Warsaw, and Gdansk. I didn't see anything. There's no time to see anything. When you're on a bus for 8.5 hours a day, just trying to get to the next stop. And I'm not complaining. The people in Kyiv have it much worse right now. I'm just saying that I'm an old, fat man, and it does take it out of me. Thank you, Clive Sutton. Crimea's getting hit, Mr. Local. Crimea is getting hit. I went through the list. I have it here, actually. On Friday's live, I think. When was the last time I was live? Friday, right? I went through the list of what got hit in Crimea last week. Command post, radar installations, 2 patrol boats, 2 ships of the Russian Federation, a troop concentration, another radar. Yeah, so Crimea is getting hit. The whole world is tariffed except fucking Russia under Trump. We want to keep them talking. We don't want to sabotage negotiations. Hey, Maria Holm, how you doing? Arna is pretty amazing. Yes, he is. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Here's a confession, Sergey. I just saw that film for the first time this Christmas. Somehow I just missed it. And I just saw it for the first time this past Christmas. It was funny. I did finally get a Whopper from Burger King. The very first thing that Arna did when he picked me up from the airport today was take me to Burger King, if you can believe it. And so I had my first Norwegian Burger King. And it was delicious, John. Delicious. Gdansk is when communism started to fall in Eastern Europe. Seawolf, the most amazing thing that happened in Gdansk was on the way from the bus station to the... I can't call it a hotel. It wasn't a hotel. I don't know what it was. I got it on booking.com and I regret it terribly. But on the way to my room last night, there's 2 wild pigs just by the side of the road in Gdansk eating at somebody's garbage. It was amazing. I've never seen a wild boar. And there they were, razorback motherfuckers just digging at the trash in Gdansk. That was something to see. Did you mention Estonians? I mentioned the NATO exercises that the Ukrainians were at, yeah. Oh, interesting, Nightshade. I haven't seen that. Send me an article, would you? Guys, I got to tell you, big thanks to Nightshade, who's always sending me great stuff. And he said Russia is using civilian infrastructure and repeaters in Belarus to expand drone strikes on Ukraine. For those of you who may not be familiar with what a repeater is a piece of technology that lets a signal come in, get strengthened, and rebroadcast. So at my mother's lake house, for example, I installed a repeater so that the Wi-Fi at the house reached the dock and you could get on the Wi-Fi from the dock. That's the function of a repeater. Pete, John was not calling me a whopper, but I kind of am a whopper in so many ways. And I appreciate your thoughtful apology. Thank you. Guys, we should all be nice to each other in here. That's for everybody. There is only one subject in here, and it is Ukraine. Beyond that, let's all be thoughtful and appreciative of each other for not turning a blind eye to the suffering of the Ukrainian people in the face of Russian terrorism. Okay. Way better than a big map. I had very mixed emotions about the U.S. win. A repeater is multiple Pete's, says Bobby. Ah, you're funny. You are funny, man. I love, what, is that Swedish? Maria Holm, are you Swedish? I forget if you're Swedish or where you're from, but I see some Nordic languages up in here. It's interesting to see. Arna's trying to teach me the Norwegian vowels, those sounds. Yeah, neato. Pete and repeat, sitting on a fence. I am, Alice, thank you. Those are the ones, Guard. Those are the ones. Right now, John, I am on a fjord somewhere in western Norway. I don't really know where, honestly. But I'm kind of, it's beautiful. I'll do some videos tomorrow. And then you can geolocate me and tell me where I am. It is a terrible anniversary, Sergey. When I started doing this, I never thought that I would be doing it for 1,000 days. Because I never thought the war would continue for another 1,000 days. It never occurred to me that I would be in Ukraine for 3/4 of the war. That never occurred to me. I thought maybe I'd be there for half of it. I was coming in for the back half. It is astonishing the turns that our lives take when we make certain decisions. They inexorably alter both our futures and who we are as people. And one thing for everybody that's in here right now, especially those not associated with Ukraine, no connection to Ukraine like me, who do not turn a blind eye to this evil, but who face it every day and stay interested and supportive of the Ukrainians. You have my utmost respect, because it is easy to be willfully ignorant of the evil that is operating in the world. It is easy to focus on your own dinner table. But to choose to engage and try to understand what's happening out there, that takes effort. And you should all respect yourselves and each other, because you are the people that put forth that effort. And I am deeply appreciative that you choose to do it with me. I appreciate you all. Hey, Betty Thompson, how you doing? Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice here. It was a little bit above freezing today. I mean, it's not nice. It's actually gray and overcast and raining. But temperature-wise, like if it could just get to this in Kyiv, I can go home, you know? Space Ghost. Norway is now the 10th country I have been in. You know, I'm an American. We do not travel much. I've been in 47 states, but this is only my 10th country. Thank you, Feisty. Everybody thank Feisty for all she does. She doesn't get enough credit. But she is faithfully here, doing this thankless work of keeping the trolls at bay. So thank you, Miss Feisty. And I'm sorry about the hockey win. I really didn't think you guys would lose that. I was surprised by that. I really was. Thanks, Martin. All right, kids. I might eat, actually. I might eat something. I might cook. Maybe I'll raid Arna's freezer and make myself a moose steak. How about that? I might just cook right now. I don't know. Either that or go to bed. I wish I had the munchies. The Netherlands came and went too fast. You be nice, Paul. Don't make me come down under. Kick your ass. You know you are good when it takes the U.S. 46 years to win against you again. Is that how long it's been since the U.S. beat the Canadians at hockey in the Olympics? 46 years? A Bullwinkle steak. We'll see. Good night, Ann. Night, Colin. Night, Terry. You're on hospital sandwiches. What are you talking about? Are you in the hospital? DM me. Let me know what's going on. Yeah, Seawolf. I should talk about that. Maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow night. Eat some cod. You know what's in the freezer is a bunch of salmon. There's a bunch of salmon in there. I might have salmon for breakfast. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Make it a great day and have a pleasant tomorrow. Talk to you soon.